Welcome to the Legacy Cultivators Podcast, the podcast where visionary changemakers share how they're building well-resourced legacies fueled by purpose, alignment, and communal care. Through these conversations, we explore the sacred dance of regenerative ecosystems, where remembrance, holistic entrepreneurship, creativity, and wealth converge. Because true legacy lives in the path that we walk together, a sacred act of weaving memory, resources, and the wisdoms that bring us home. I'm your host, Love Soulèy. Now let's get into it. Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome to the Legacy Cultivators Podcast. I am so excited because today we have an incredible guest, Doriana. She is all the things, an incredible artist, memory worker, archivist, collagist, and it's just really beautiful how spiritually and culturally rich and rooted her work is. And we are going to get into all of the things. But for now, until we get there, let's just start off in this present moment. Doriana, thank you so much for joining me on this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, and that beautiful introduction makes me feel so tender inside. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I love that. And tender. So what I was about to ask you is if you could give me just a word or a phrase that really describes, how you're feeling in this present moment in your body, mind, and spirit.
That's a good question. I feel very curious. I think that's a word that I've been thinking about a lot recently and its implications in my life, and kind of trying to reach more towards that element of curiosity with everything that I do. And so I'm trying to be present in that as much as I can.
Oh, yes. I love that. Honestly, that is literally one of my things. So when I'm feeling either disoriented or I feel like I have a lot going on, or even just emotionally, the first thing I'll do is get curious about what's going on. What am I feeling? That is beautiful. And I love that. If you want to share a little bit about your work and your creative practice and how that has really, blossomed over the years and how you got into it, all the things about your creative process and practice.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny because I haven't really talked about it a lot recently, because I have been very far away from it for a long time. It has felt to me, and it's been in a lot of ways very detrimental to my mental health. I really struggle with working full-time, and I have since I really started working full-time, because when I start to find myself at a loss of how to create the space for a creative practice, and because the idea of labor is taking over that space, I start to really have a bit of a meltdown. And it's happened to me a couple times as I've entered the workforce where I've been in full-time positions and I'm I can't even create anymore. I went from working in an art museum full-time, thinking it was my dream job, to absolutely hating it and having no time to have a creative practice. And after I left that position, I really wanted to be intentional about the ways that I spend my time. And time is really important to me. It just is. I'm learning that more and more about myself. I feel really triggered when my time feels wasted. I feel really triggered when people don't honor their commitments of my, if it's related to my time and all of that. I'm just really becoming more aware of that for myself. And I think that after I left that job, I was really clear. I was I'm going to go work part-time and I'm going to work in the art so that I get some expansion of a skill set, a new skill set, or I get the opportunity to really have my creative energy fed. But then I also don't want to work full-time, so I can do part-time and then I can dedicate the rest of my time to my own practice. And I did that for a really long time and I really loved it. And I bounced around and I learned how to screen print and I worked at a bookstore and this was before I needed to have health insurance. And so I lived it up, right? Like, I really appreciated that. And then I got to a point where I was just like, I love this so much that I'm going to dedicate my full-time work to being a creative gig worker. And I'm just going to fill my time with creating. And the other part I'll just teach. And so I did that for like 2 years, and I had such an incredible experience, but it also was really stressful on me financially. And so it got to the point where I had a really major life shift in regards to my mom, and she got really sick and she needed like the complete change in care. And so at that point in my life, like I was just turning 26, and we like really had to redesign, like I had to really redesign her life for her to get her needs met. And that changed everything. And so I wasn't as financially sound as I was, because instead of being a freelancer full time, I was really taking care of her. And so I really wasn't making any money, or not enough to support my necessary bills. So it got to a point where I was like, I need full-time work, and I just turned 26, and I don't have insurance anymore, and my mom needs a lot of help and assistance and care. And so I found a job working in a nursing home with the elderly, as an arts specialist, and that's where I am now. And that's been profoundly interesting, like working in healthcare, working with the elderly, which I love more than anything I've ever done. And I think that there's been so much benefit to that, but I'm also getting to a point where managing my creative practice is feeling really needs to be another, like, it's coming back to becoming a priority for me. So it's been like really interesting, for me in developing a new creative practice for myself that isn't the old me that was a freelance artist, because I'm not that person anymore. And so I've been really trying to navigate that space and thinking about the just new elements that I want to add to my practice. I'm very rooted in like memory work and archival practices and the things that I create. And always have been, and I've been mostly a bookmaker and a collage artist, and I've been really enhancing those skills and learning new skills of like, I've been leaning more towards, cyanotypes and like creating a science behind that, and kind of like cultivating a project around quilting and cyanotypes, and thinking a lot about like the theme behind that being about domestic work and Black women and the healthcare system, and kind of investigating a lot of like the CNAs that I work with and like their experience being and working in like healthcare, and like tracing all the way back into like the transatlantic slave trade, and how like women and wet nurses and like different elements of that, and like slave revolts around domestic work. Like all of this is what I've been thinking about in regards to like creating cyanotype quilts, and the ways in which I want to incorporate like a large historical perspective of like what women have gone through, like even the stereotypes of mammies and like where that comes from, and exploring Gone with the Wind, and like all of how these things kind of like are through lines to each other, and how like contemporary caretaking work is mostly now within a healthcare system as CNAs and very rarely as nurses. And so I've just been really thinking about that, and like the pay around that CNAs really get, and like the credit that they're given, and the lack of power that they have but are still quite deserving of. And so I have just been really considering that, because that's what I'm living, working in a healthcare center, but also, and it's things that I have never considered because I've never worked in healthcare before. And growing up, like, that's not what my parents did. And so it's just like, I've been very curious about this and trying to explore it through a different vessel, which is like this really interesting way of image making, which are cyanotypes, and like experimenting with that. And so that has like taken me into a new realm that I've been really loving. And not only do I get to learn how to create cyanotypes, but it's also something that I've been able to bring to my residents, and I've been able to bring into my workspace with the CNAs that I work with, and like really helping to build relationships with them and to just think and consider all of these things that I knew about but like never really put much thought into. And so it's requiring a lot of like research and tapping back into like archival imagery of things that like old newspaper clippings of like ads for wet nurses and things that I'm finding is just like absolutely insane. So that's like something that I've been really loving, and I think like it's a reestablishment. Like it really feels like I'm stepping into a new chapter of myself as an artist. The things that I want to create, the things that I want to learn. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I hope that answers the question.
No,
But that's where I'm at.
yes, like it honestly kind of made me think about like your idea of even your creative community is like it's expanding because these what you have at work is now also becoming part of your creative community just because you're spending so much
Yeah.
time there, you're getting inspired, and it's like that kind of reflection. Honestly, like I'm in a doula training right now myself, and like
Wow.
it's just interesting to see how, like, as multidimensional people, how all these different aspects of our lived reality then folds together into like what we create. And what I was doing last year is like very different from
Very
what I'm
different.
doing now. And so my art becomes the reflection of that. And like, I even really resonate with you saying, talking about how you feel a little bit kind of far from the art community. And it's really like as we as artists continue to like live and experience different seasons, the way that like our art practice shifts, and even just how we like maneuver within community shifts
Yeah.
greatly too. And like that can feel like such an edge because we're so used to like sometimes our personal creativity looking a certain way, and then when our personal creativity starts to look completely different, it's like you start to question yourself a little bit.
Yeah, you definitely do. Like, I think that it is like, I really haven't been questioning myself. And I think the shift that I've taken in my practice that has happened like kind of unconsciously is like, I'm not making things now with the idea that they're going to be devoured by the public. Like, I think I really used to create with like, whether that was like thing I was actively thinking it or I was passively thinking it. Like that was the space in which I was working from. And I think that I've been really grateful for whatever shift has occurred. And I think a lot of it is like when you're a freelancer, you have to worry about that because you have to make money. And like there's a certain element of it that is just crucial of like, okay, are people going to like it? Will this sell? Like, because that your livelihood is coming from that place in a lot of ways. But when you don't have to worry about if your money is coming from the things that you make, it's it created a shift for me because I'm not thinking about that. I'm like, this is just something that I'm interested in. This is like the experience that I'm having right now working in a healthcare center and working with elderly community and working a lot with nurses and CNAs, and this is just like what I've been observing, and this is my current lived experience, and it's inspiring me to investigate it further. And I'm not worried about how it's going to be shown or who's going to see it. Like I'm not even thinking about that. Like I'm just trying to make a quilt for real. Like that's it.
Facts.
Like I don't need it to go anywhere. It can go right on my bed and I'd be fine with it.
Yeah.
Like so like I think that I was speaking to someone about this recently is like I've been so grateful for being able to view everything as an experiment. Ooh. And like it's not about like we are doing this. Like no, we're going to experiment with cyanotypes. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to try different things that really may not work. We're going to waste materials sometimes, and
not
it's going to be really fucking fun.
Yes.
And I don't think that, like, the thing that I'm really trying to shift in my approach to creating communally and creating in isolation with myself is the experience of that. Is letting go of the pressure of what the result or how something is gonna turn out. Especially when you have a project in mind of like, oh, I'm so excited. I would need it to look like this. Like, this is what I'm trying to. And when you kind of let go of that and you're just like, no, the picture doesn't need to be even. Like, it doesn't need to be in the center either. Like, it didn't come out that way. That doesn't mean I need to like go and redo it necessarily. I think that it's all just an act of extreme surrender and experimentation to whatever comes forth, because none of it is really in your control. Like, even with making cyanotypes, it's a very like surrender practice, because you can get anything wrong at any point because there's so many steps to it, and I'm not interested in perfecting those steps so that I get the perfect cyanotype. No, like, that's good enough for me. Like, the experimentation was good enough for me, and I learned something about how to make it better maybe next time. But like, there's just so much joy that I'm finding in just the simple experiment. And with working with the elderly, like, that has really also given me so much more power and confidence in working in an experimental type of space, where they're like, they don't really care about what the final product is. Like, they really don't. Like, they are always in process.
Oof.
And so being in process is just about experimenting and trying things and seeing what works or what you like or what you may not like. And like, I think that we are never a master of anything. And I think for a long time, that's what I thought, is like, you know, there were levels to it or there was hierarchy to it. But no, I just love to make. Like, I don't know if I really even find being an artist an attractable label anymore. Like, I'm just someone who makes things and really enjoys being a maker of things. I think that for me, like, an artist is, there was so much attraction to that name of like, oh, I've made it. You know what I mean? I'm here. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't really identify as that anymore. Like, I'm someone who really enjoys making art, but like, I don't know. Like, I'm not a master of it. Like, you know, like, I think I'm just a maker and a creator and someone who wants to just, in lack of a better word, like, be active in producing things, you know? So yeah, that's what I've been really considering and really enjoying about my new approach to having a practice. And it is a practice. It's just something that you keep trying at.
Oof. I love that so much, because if there's one lesson that I learned from that winter portal that we just left, is that like, process is so special
Important.
and sacred.
Yeah.
We always try to rush through it. And that's like a life bar. We try to do that in creating. Even like, I found myself like in the winter portal, like as I'm going through this initiation of moving from Atlanta to Dallas, that's just the surface level. Okay. Like, that's not even, but internally I was churning. I was going through it a lot internally. And I found myself like trying to rush the process of like, oh, this feels like a growth edge. This feels very uncomfortable. Like, let's get out of this ASAP. And I realized I was making it more painful for myself, because I just wanted to like get to this outcome of happiness instead of like the growth and all of that. And within that, you really learn that like, oh, like, we as humans, when we're not trying, when we don't allow, when we don't flow, when we don't surrender, that's literally when we make things the most painful. And so it's so beautiful to see that reflection, even like, art, and how children don't care what it looks like. They'll act like, yo, this is the best thing ever.
This is the shit. Yeah, like, and it is. Like, if you say it's the shit, then it's the shit.
Yeah.
And like, that's the thing that I'm really working towards. And I think that like, I've been so grateful to be gifted this opportunity to work at this place, even though it's crazy and it's insane. But like, it's taught me so much about, the act of surrendering and kind of like just giving yourself over to it instead of trying to have some like control over everything, And you can just, you just give up. You give yourself over to it. And whatever comes from that is whatever is supposed to come from that. And I think that in that process, you're also learning. When you open yourself up to the idea of experimenting and learning, then you learn a lot from learning a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I would love to hear more about, like, how did you even get started with archiving memory, creating, like, what was that journey like?
I've always been an archivist. I've always really been like someone that curates things. I think like I started off as a writer, and I started off as a writer to just because my grandmother was an incredible memory worker. I don't think that she, like, looking back, I don't know if she would have called herself that, but that's what she was doing. Like, she worked with her own memory every day. And my mom has Alzheimer's, and there's an element of that where it's just like really helps me focus on memory in a different kind of way. Like, I had a grandmother who just was like an avid journal. Like, she had this, strict is not the right word, but the most consistent writing practice I've ever seen. Like, she would wake up, she would make her tea, she would sit in her little Detroit home in her favorite sunspot in her sunroom, or if it was nice outside, she would go and sit with the sunflowers in her garden, and she would write for at least an hour. And like every day, it didn't not matter what happened. Like, the world could have ended, and she would have been sitting there with her sunflowers, writing in her journal. Like, she was just had such an intentional practice, and like she helped me to fall in love with words at a really early age, and she was very intentional about creating spaces for me to read and to try writing. And it wasn't even about journaling. She would just be like, write about the things that you feel. And so I started off writing, and with her, it was like, you are archiving your life. Like, when she passed away, in her basement, there were bookshelves and bookshelves and bookshelves filled with her journals from her whole life. It was crazy. And, you could pick one out and, read the whole thing. Like, there were thousands of them. And I'd never seen anything like it. Like, I knew she would write, but like, I never really, like, once she passed away and you really looked at it, I was like, she was so consistent. It might have been the only thing she was ever consistent with, but she was just like devoted to her practice. And I think in that way she was devoted to herself. And from then on, like, she passed away when I was like in college. And so I was at a certain point where I was really thinking about like the ways that I wanted to create and stepping into that more intentionally, and in just more of a real way for myself. And I remember like looking through some of her journals and reading them and learning so many things about her that I didn't know, but also like really loving her for leaving me that, because I think that's really where I began to get curious about what it is to work with memory. Like, she was working with her memories, and she was working with her past, and she was working with her present every day that she wrote. Like, you would see things that she happened to her when she was a child, or things that she did as a mother that she wasn't proud of, or like things she had wished she'd done better, or the ways in which she was trying to hold her accountable, or, lose her ego. She wrote a lot about ego. And, I just like had never seen a person, just be so delicate in a practice about working with themselves and their own memories, the things that were severely damaging that she'd had done to people, and the things that she felt so sorry for, and the ways that she was trying to be better. And I just was really drawn to that. And so I was writing at that point. I took a lot of creative writing classes in college, but then like as visual art started to take over my life, I really started to think about the ways that I wanted to do that visually. And for a long time, it was like films were also that to me. And I loved movies. Still love movies. But yeah, that's really when I started to think about what that could look like in my own practice. Where, like, what does it look like to really inhabit memory in a way that, like, enhances our relationships with one another, especially as Black and brown people? What is it like to kind of honor memory and, like, the brokenness of memory at the same time, and the pain and grief that we sit with through the memories that we have, but also the ways that we can empower ourselves through that? And, like, through images and through, like, everything, like, we all archive things all the time and don't even consciously know it, you know? And so I really started to think about that, and, like, the things that my grandmother had kept, or the things that my mom had kept from my childhood, or the things that, like, were passed down to me from, like, older generations, or, like, the things my cousins and I shared, like, things that I collected as a kid, you know what I mean? Like, all of these things, like, are archives. And so, yeah, as I was in college, it was something that I just really started to explore more intentionally. And eventually it led me to, you know, like, a kind of creative collage practice as an archivist. And also as a curator. Like, I think that I was always trying, like, intentionally curating spaces and environments. And it was something that I did for a lot of different people while I was in college, like, as work. And it always connected back to memory. I think, like, curating is memory work, you know? Um, so it's always kind of been there, and I was raised with it, but I don't think that I really realized that that's what I was doing until, like, my early 20s.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that's honestly one of the many, many reasons why I wanted to bring you on to talk about memory work and archiving, is because there's this, like, almost like disconnect between, we have so many stories, so many memories, so many archives, but then, like, people will, like, ask me, like, how do I get into memory work? How do I get into archiving? And I think there's, like, I don't know what it is, because it's, like, so accessible, but people don't realize that. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I would love to kind of hear you talk about, like, how more of us can, like, just feel more confident and intentional about this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting because I think there's an element of it that I've started to feel over the last few years of, like, what you see on the internet is it's like a very elitist, like, you're going into an archive and you're pulling out material and you're researching and you're writing scholarly papers, and, like, that's great. And I can, like, we can hold space for that because that's incredible work that people are doing, but that's not all memory work consists of. And I think that there's a disconnect of, like, it's an everyday practice. It's something that you choose, that you don't choose to do, and you're doing it anyway, to be quite honest. Like, you have things hanging around your homes, your parents have things in their homes, your grandparents, if they're still alive, have things in their home that are archives. They are, you know what I mean, collections of memory that people have put together. Like, a scrapbook is an archive, a CD collection is an archive. Like, the little barrette boxes that I've had since I was a child are archives. Like, these are things that we don't consciously think about, but they have deep intention in our lives. And when we go back through them, like, we are lit up with memory and nostalgia, and they bring us back to a place that was beautiful, or sometimes not so happy, and that's okay too. But I do think that we engage with memory work every day, but we just don't know that. Um, and we're constantly archiving things. I mean, you have an iPhone, you have a photo, you have your photos on there. It's a freaking archive. It goes all the way back to whenever, it goes back to. But, like, that's an archive of images. And so I think that we've kind of, like, gained a disconnect, because to me it is something that is quite spiritual, and it's a practice that, to me, is very intentional. Um, and I get to practice that every day with the people that I work with. With working with the elderly, like, that's consistently working with memory. You're working with people who are lacking memory. You're working with people who are processing memory. You're working with people who have things that they don't want to remember and things that they do. And it's always so interesting talking with a group of elderly people and the things that they remember about their lives and the things that are important to them, things that brought them joy and excitement. And I think that that's how I try to inhabit a practice of, like, we're all gathered around a table and we're making art, but I'm asking them really intense and not intense, but specific questions about their lives. Like, where did you grow up? How many kids did you have? What was it like giving birth? Was it painful? Like, you know, all of these different things, and you learn so much material about a person. Like, you learn their matter, you learn what they're made out of. And like, I don't know, like, that to me is an incredible gift. Like, I want to know what everybody is made out of.
What are you made out of?
And what they're made out of, because like, it's just remarkable. And like, these people, it's not just like this like, they've done amazing things and they've lived a great life. Like, like, they are still doing amazing things and they are still living a wonderful life. And there's all of these things that they have come from, and they're still more places that they're going. Trust. Like, and I think that is like what's so beautiful about working with memory, and like feeling like you're holding it in your hand. And that's like an incredible way to get to know someone in a real way. Like, to build a connection in a way that can last a lifetime. There's so many things that people have told me, and stories that people have shared with me throughout the years that I will never forget. And so I think that's the beauty of memory work. It doesn't have to be you sitting in a research center, like, collecting photographs.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't have to be that. It can be that, but it doesn't have to be. Yeah. So I think I have really seen that shift. And I think that is a really important thing to point out. And I appreciate you for saying that, because there is a disconnect. It doesn't mean that stuff isn't real, and that stuff doesn't have autonomy, and that it's not needed. But I think, like, I even have trouble with that sometimes, of like, oh, there's this great, like, memory work fellowship. And then, you know, you look at the criteria and you're like, that's not what I want to do. You know, like, it's lacking like a human connectedness that I think I seek in creating memory work. Like, it's about discussion and conversation, and things that people like hold deep and true to like themselves. And yeah, so there's a variety of different ways that you could look at it.
Yeah. And when I also think about memory work and just like a huge gift and medicine that has played in my life, is like, I never got to meet any of my grandparents, but my aunt in Chicago, the last time I went to Chicago, she had like so many of my grandmother's things, like even her like hard candies that she used to chew on, like in a Ziploc bag, just like a bunch of her candies in her little purse with her prayers in French in a notebook. And like, the power that it has to connect us with people that in the 3D we haven't gotten to meet, but then it's like, wow, like, you feel so close to them because you're holding their artifacts. You're like hearing the stories of like your aunts and your uncles talking about them. And it's like, that is such a medicine, because it encourages me to even archive and do this work even more, because down the road, I want people who don't get to get to meet me.
Exactly. Like, to know you. And I think that that's so important. Like, I really think like another way, a great way to start an archival practice or memory work practice, is to build an altar. Like, that is a really great way to, like, an easy, simple way to begin a practice for yourself. Of like, I think altars are phenomenal spaces to bring physical objects or put physical objects together that are essentially an archive, you know? Like, these could be things that make you happy. These could be things that you receive from friends. It could be like, you know, little tchotchkes that you got at different places that really matter to you. It could be the things that bring, you know, you good juju. It could be a plant. It could be all of these things that are essentially, you know, what you're made out of in some ways. And you can use that space to pray and connect with your ancestors, or to speak with people that have passed on, or to speak with people that are still living, and maybe it's some things you're afraid to say. Like, it's just essentially a space that you can use to begin a memory practice. And it doesn't have to be, you know, like it can just be something that you softly invite yourself into. And it can grow into being whatever you want it to be. But, like, I have an altar in my apartment, and it's in the hallway, and it's just a couple shelves, and every time I pass it, there's a prayer, or there's, you know, a wish or a desire, and I have things on there that make me feel really good, or things that, like, things from my grandparents, or things from my parents that have been passed down, or things that I want to eventually give my siblings. Like, there's a lot of things there that mean a lot to me, and it's the sum of my parts. And so I think, like, that's a really great place to enter into a practice if you are feeling a little bit confused or lost or don't know how to begin. Like, that's something that I definitely would recommend. And it's also, like, an intentional thing that when you are collecting things in your life, like, to think more honestly about the materials that you collect. Like, for me, that's taken a really long time of, like, curating a collection of memories or things that speak to who I am or are who I am, that I, with the only intention of passing them down to my children. Like, that's how I think about it. Like, I want my children or my children's children or the people that come after me or the people that might not be my kids but I mother in some way or anything, like my best friends, or I want them to, when I'm gone, I want them to have things that are who I am. Like, that's something that I consider really greatly. That's why I collect art very intentionally. You know, like, these are the things that I think about, like, I don't know how much I love the idea of like legacy and the way we talk about it. It can
we're gonna get into that.
But, like, that's what I think about when I talk about lineage or legacy, or, like, what is coming behind me. And the things that I want to leave for them, so that they can know my life.
Yeah.
And they can
and
know
from
the things
you.
Yeah, from me. And so they can know where I've been and the things I've seen and what I loved and who I fell out of love with, and, like, you know, the ways that I was angry and who I was upset at. Like, all of the things. I want them to know the most intimate things about me through the things that I leave behind.
Yes.
And that's another thing to just think about throughout your life as you collect material.
I love that invitation of, like, a simple way is just to start work with an altar. And I also love, like, cause there sometimes feels like this disconnect in terms of, like, oh, like, if I'm going to do an altar, I have to do it this specific way. Or if I don't know all the information about different gods and goddesses, then I can't do one. And it's like, no, like, an altar, if you're within a specific religious or spiritual practice, you choose, but an altar is expansive. I mean, even when I think about, literally, like, when I think about, like, at my parents' home, we grew up playing the piano, but we don't play the piano anymore, but they still have it. And on the piano is, like, all these beautiful frames of family members and medals from when we were children. And just, like, I'm like, that's an altar.
That's an altar.
Yes.
Like, and you can even have an altar, and it doesn't have to be a place that you go to actively pray if that's not what you feel like you want to do. Like, I don't really sit in front of my altar and pray. It's not my preference. But for me, when I walk past it, you know, I might send up a small prayer, or I might be like, God, just help me through this. Get me through this day today. You know, I might spray some Florida water on myself and keep it pushing. Yeah. But, like, it doesn't have to be, like, this drastic thing. Like, it can obviously be whatever you want it to. Yeah. But I think for someone who's just entering into that space, like, it can be anything that you want. It doesn't have to look a certain way, and it doesn't have to be a certain thing. It can be whatever you want it to be. And I think we also have altars in other spaces in our homes, or just spaces that you may like, that feel good to you in your home, that you can always go to and use as an altar too. You know, it might be a room or a corner, or, like, a little vibe you got on your bed, or whatever it may be, or, like, the way you set up your dresser, what's on top of your dresser. Like, it doesn't have to like be this overbearing thing. And it's a great place to start. And it's just a great place to start also too, and just like going around your home and looking and deciding what's important to you.
Ooh. It's
You
that
know?
simple. It's that accessible.
Yeah.
That's what makes me so excited. It's like your grandma doing it, your mama doing it, your
Yeah.
little cousin can do it, and you can do it too. It's
Anybody can
not this
do
huge
it.
thing, you know?
Yeah.
And yet
100%.
it
Like,
has such big impact, you know?
it has a huge impact. Like, my grandmother used to say, like, have nothing in your home that does not provide a use or that you find to be beautiful.
Shout out to
And I think that that's like, I think about that a lot. You know, like, I think there's been times where like I bring so much junk into my house, and I'm just like, girl, what are you gonna do? Like, this, you don't need these things. Um, and when I started to really like live more by that, I mean, I gotta check myself all the time. But like, yes, what you have in your home should provide you use. It should be useful to you. And also the things that you should like think the things that in your home are beautiful things. Like, you deserve to live in a place that has beautiful things to you. And that's different for everybody.
Yeah, and it's funny because like even in the process of moving, I think about that because I'm like, man, like when I'm getting ready to move, I'm like throwing away, giving away all this stuff, and I'm
Yeah.
like, if I was just more intentional about like what I actually accumulate and keep, I wouldn't at the end of like 2 years, I wouldn't have all this stuff to give
Yeah.
away. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it's just
No,
that's
it's
what
so
really
hard. It's so hard. It's so much easier said than done. It's just so difficult the way that we live of like, yeah, keeping things intentional. It's really hard.
yeah.
But it's something to, you know,
It's an invitation
put
though, which
yourself
I'm
up
like,
to. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I love that. Okay, so as we kind of wrap it up, and it's funny because you touched on this, but I'm like even more curious to hear more about your thoughts about this. This is called the Legacy Cultivators Podcast, so I'm super curious, like, what does legacy feel like and mean to you, and like, what are you building when it comes to legacy, in whatever definition that means to you?
I love this question. To me, I think I go really a lot back and forth between motherhood or non-motherhood. From just myself. And I think like when I'm I'm thinking about it in a way of like, this is something I really want for my life. Like, that is what's most important. But it's not just children. Like, I have younger siblings who are like 14 years younger than me, and they're a huge part of like what I dream about when I think about what I'm leaving behind, or who I'm leaving it to. Um, I think like when I think about legacy, it's not about like building myself up to a certain point to make a certain amount of money so that my kid's gonna be cool. Like, that's not what I'm thinking about when I think about legacy. It's not really about like getting to a place of quote unquote success, or the idea of like fame or like glory in that way. Like, it's not about like people knowing who I am or like recognizing me. Which I think sometimes legacy is that, or people's kind of conception, or like, I need to get to a certain point of monetary gain so that I can leave. And it's not that it's not valid, but it's just like not what I think about when I think about legacy. It's just a lot more like, it feels very spiritual in that way of like, there's so much that the people that came before me have left behind so that my life could have more ease, and my life could be softer, and that I could have experiences of tenderness. And then also that I could have experiences of rage um and anxiety and despair, like, you know, like, which are all equally as important things. Like, so that could be be fullness in my humanity, and be full in that, and know that there's nothing I can't survive.
Oof, nothing, nothing.
And I know that people who have the people that have left that legacy to me. And that's what I want to leave the people after me. Like, of course I want my children to feel financially stable. Of course I want them to have opportunity. But, like, that's not what I think about leaving them. You know, it is, like, the things that I collect over my lifetime so that they can have an understanding of the person that I was. And the people that I have been throughout my life. And they could know my 14-year-old self, you know, my 6-year-old self, and my 20-year-old self, and my 65-year-old self. Like, I want them to know it all.
Yes.
And I want them to have access to me after I'm gone. You know, like, I want them to feel, not that, like, weirdly, and, like, I'm still there, or, like, I'm a ghost or some shit. But, like, I don't know, like, I think that I've had such a complex relationship with motherhood throughout my life, and, like, there's been such a hole in my experience of, like, my closeness and the depth that I had wanted to feel with my mom. And that's okay, because every mother-daughter relationship has nuance and complexity and is really hard. It can be really fucking hard.
Most have
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. And our mothers are, quite honestly, never who we want them to be. And there's a level of acceptance that I have for that, but I also really want, and this is not just, like, for children that I bear, or, like, but it could be, like, people that I have other mothered, or, like, I don't know what's, you know, gonna happen. But, like, yeah, I just want them to, have access to who I am and who I was. And that's what I want to leave behind. Like, I want them to have my poems. I want them to have the books that I liked. I want them to have the, you know, the stories, and I want them to have my inspirations, and I want them to have, like, moments of my defeats, and, like, I want them to have it all. And I would have given anything to have that from my mom too.
Yeah.
Yeah, to just know, like, that she had a life before me, and this is kind of what it looked like, and this is the kind of person she was in the world. And then, you know, was her life as a mom, and, like, this is what she thought she was doing great at. I might not agree with it, but, like, this is what she was feeling when she was raising me, or like, these were the things that she struggled with. And, like, you know, after I was up and gone out the house, like, these are the things that she was doing. Like, she was making, or she was cooking, or she was traveling, or she was learning this about herself. Like, there's just, like, so much that I want to know.
Yeah.
And I want to leave that behind, and I want that to also live while I am living.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. And I honestly feel very similar, because, like, I'll ask my mom to, like, talk about stories from childhood, and, you know, when you're not in that moment anymore, there's only so much, like, you're able to, like, share. So, like, I think about that often too, like, even with my journals, because, like, my handwriting is not the best. So, like, I intentionally am like, okay, let me make sure I write clear enough so that, like, people moving forward, because, like, I want them to, I have so many questions about my grandparents that, like, the details, the little things. It's like, you know, what smells did you appreciate the most? Like, those things that, like,
yes, all of that stuff,
you know. And I'm like, nah, I'm gonna write this in my journal. Y'all gonna know I'm gonna record myself in the middle of this deep initiation and challenge that I'm going through.
Yep.
Y'all are gonna know, like, just, like, the wholeness of, like, the sweet times and the really challenging times, and, like, how I maneuvered that. That is so, like, those are so special. And I'm so grateful to, like, even hear how you're like, no, this is what legacy means to me. Like, that's so important, you know?
100%. And if, like, I low-key want to be a grandmother more than I want to be a mom. But, like, sheesh, I don't know. There's just something about that. I think it's just, like, I don't know. I actually don't know what it is. Not that wouldn't love to be a mom. But, like, I think there's also an element of, like, I also really want to be a grandma. And, like, I want to be able to, like, give my grandchildren that kind of thing, too. Like, yeah, I don't know, because that's what my grandmother gave me. Like, there were so many gifts that she just gave me without even knowing it. It was just in her. Like, it was just of her. She's like, try this out. Write this down or read this book. And then I did. And it just was like, this shaped my life. So, yeah, I think there's so much. There's so much.
That's probably where that comes from, that like desire
Mhm.
to like, you got this beautiful experience and you like want to pass it forward kind of thing, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. So tell us what are you most excited for with your art practice, with life, with anything moving forward, and how can people connect with you and support your work moving forward? That's like two in one.
That is that's no, it's fine. I want to make sure I answer all the questions though. You can find me on Instagram. I don't really be on there, but you can if you want to follow me. It's just BYDORIANA DIAZ. It's by Doriana Diaz is my Instagram handle. Um, Sometimes I put my work up there. I'm trying to take a little bit of a break, but you can also reach out to me. My email is info at dorianadiaz.com. If you want to learn more about my work or if you want to connect in any other way, I love an email. Yeah, and I'm most excited about just like continuing to expand my creative practice in new and exciting ways, and like especially with the summer coming up, I just like get more inspired and being outside more and being like, I don't know, with the people and like just being in the world just really inspires me. And so I'm really excited to continue to build this practice that feels really good. And I'm also just excited to like continue to step further into what I want for my life and to be confident and proud and certain, and also sometimes uncertain, but like to be certain in my decisions and really communicating that without apology, and like moving into that with as much grace for myself as I can. Um yeah, 'cause I think there's a lot of change coming for me,
Mhm.
and instead of fearing that and
Embrace
like
them.
acting passively or not communicating, I'm really trying to be clear with myself and clear with people in my life to make those things happen so I
Mm.
can be happier. Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful. And I'm affirming that kind of continuation in your creative process and as well as just in life, you know, we're all figuring it out one step at a time. We're all,
Day at a time,
that's all we
honest.
got. That's all we can
Yeah.
do. Like every single day. That's one phrase that I always like have in my head. One foot in front of the other. That's it. That's all. That's all I have to think about.
Oh,
The rest, bye.
yeah. The rest can wait. Yeah. I don't know. Cause then it can get very complicated without just doing what's in front of you. It really can.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. I'm so grateful for
Thank
your time
you.
that we
This
made
was
this happen.
amazing. Yes. Thank you so much for asking me and including me and all that, Jess.
Oh
I
my
feel really grateful.